Hello grade 12s, welcome back. It's Economics with Ms. Piwe, and we are still looking at the consequences of market failure. And just before the break, we were looking at the marginal social cost as compared to the marginal private cost. So let's continue. So if the market is left to its own devices, a quantity which is Q will be produced at price P, which is the original price, like I showed you earlier on in the graph. So let's pull this up. Okay, there we are. All right, so P is our original price, and then Q is our original quantity over there. Okay, so if we move from here, let me just use a different color. Okay, so we have that movement. It will take us to the original quantity, okay, and then because it's coming at the original price. Okay, so that's the point, and we've noted that. Okay, this is a socially inefficient solution. So social efficiency requires that MSC be equal to the price of the product, and this occurs at P1 and quantity and also at Q1, which is quantity 1. So fewer goods should be produced at a higher price, okay? And then you can see back in our graph a situation where P1 is equals to the quantity, which is Q1, okay? So let's use a different color to... So here's our P1 over here, and then we know that it takes us to Q1 over there, okay? So this would be the ideal situation. So we would want this and not this particular one, okay? In terms of the marginal social costs, okay? Okay, and then the shaded angle represents the negative externality, which is the welfare loss to society. Okay, so let's go and see where the shaded area is in our... Okay, so here are the external costs that we are referring to that have caused a shift to happen, okay, in our graph. Okay, so let's move on and now look at what the government is doing, you know, in terms of reducing the negative externalities. So what is the role of government, and has government been successful in doing this, in reducing the negative? So the government has carried out campaigns in order to change or to persuade people from causing negative externalities. Okay, all right, so we've all seen this. We've all seen a number of campaigns with regards to smoking, consuming alcohol, and pollution as well. So government has spent a considerable amount of budget in order to create awareness in our societies in terms of the dangers of these negative externalities. So it's up to us as consumers to make the decision whether to stop or to continue using those particular products. So the government has done its part by creating awareness and also highlighting the dangers of these negative externalities. Okay, so that's the one thing that the government has done. And you know, with drinking, especially around the festive season, the Easter holiday season, there are a lot of campaigns in terms of creating awareness that once you have consumed alcohol, do not go and then drive your car and be on the road, whether you are a driver or a pedestrian, because of the negative implications that are involved around that decision. Also with smoking, you know, they make awareness campaigns in terms of the dangers of smoking. So it's really a personal choice to continue or not. Also, by putting levies on taxes on goods that cause negative externalities. So, for example, taxes are levied on cigarettes and alcohol. And I did mention this when we were talking about sin tax earlier on. that the government will impose taxes on these goods in order to discourage people from consuming them, and with hope that if they hike up the price, that will discourage the users or the consumers of those goods to continue using them. So in some regard, they have been successful because the products have become so expensive that other people have decided to stop using them, but others still continue to use them because of the satisfaction that they get from consuming the product, and also because they do have the financial resources in order to purchase those consumer goods. Also, the passing of laws and regulations to prevent activities that cause negative externalities. For example, the tobacco companies are not allowed to advertise. So this was quite a good move because the advertising campaigns that they were using were so good. They made smoking to look like something that is so attractive to people that don't smoke because of how cool it was portrayed or perceived to have been. So the fact that they've said you are no longer allowed to smoke, and now, no, not to smoke, but to advertise cigarettes. And people have been saying, so why doesn't the same regulation apply to alcohol? So why don't we stop advertising alcohol on TV and on radio? Because we've got young kids who get exposed to all these advertisements that make drinking alcohol such a cool thing, and they spend so much money on these campaigns in order to attract a new market that is going to consume alcohol. But that's a debate that you can have in your class or in your study group. It's always important to engage with these issues and also listen to counter arguments around these issues as well. So there are laws that regulate the amount of air pollution and waste. So this is important in terms of the factories and the manufacturers. So they are guided by certain laws and regulations in terms of air pollution and also wastage as well. Because if this is not regulated, then the manufacturers or the factories tend to exploit the environment, and then we end up in a situation where we get exposed to a lot of germs and viruses because of all the wastage and the dumping that gets done in our environment. Okay, so let's talk positives. So we've spent a bit of time talking about negatives. Let's do some positives. It's always good to talk about positive things. So if people acknowledge the social benefit of a good, they would demand more of that good. The price of such a good would therefore increase. Okay, so if people see the social benefit, the value of that good, or what it adds to our comfort and well-being, and then this would help to increase the demand for that good. So it's important just to be aware of that social benefits do somehow impact the demand for a good or for a service. Okay, so it's important that you also create an understanding amongst society in terms of the benefits of these social goods. Okay, so then this is depicted in this graph, which is figure 8.3. So we're going to have a look of how the positives actually work. So from the graph, it can be seen the supply of education, which is also the marginal social cost, is represented by SS. So we'll go to the graph just now. And the demand for school education, which is also a marginal private benefit of the industry, is represented by DD. So the cost of school fees is P, and the quantity demanded is Q. Okay. Come on, let's move it up. There we are. There we are. So I wanted to highlight Q over there. Okay, so let's go back to this point. There we are. It looks perfect. Okay, so now we're looking at the demand of school education, which is also a marginal private benefit, and of the industry, and it's represented by DD, and the cost of school fees is P, and the quantity demanded and supplied is Q. Okay, so let's go back. So we've got our price over here. So here's price, and then let's have a look at our quantity as well. Okay, and then we've got our quantity over here. Okay, and then here we have the price of school fees. Okay. Okay, so that's the price of school fees over there. And then the quantity demanded and supplied is represented by Q over here. Okay, and then we've got our supply curve here. And then we also now have our two demands curve. So we've got our original demand curve, and then we've got D1 over there. Obviously, there has been a shift from this original demand curve into D1. So we would look at what are the causes that resulted in that shift, and also the external benefit will come in quite handy. Okay, so remember, we are looking at the marginal social costs and also the marginal private costs as well. And then we did say that when there's huge emphasis on the social benefit of a product or service, that would create an increase in terms of the demand for that particular product. Okay. All right. Okay, so we're looking at the supply of education. We know that education is important, and also it's seen as a huge social benefit. Hence, there's such a huge demand for schools in order to provide education. So we can see that the demand curve D1 also represents the marginal social benefit, which is MSB, and that is the level of education that should be demanded. Okay. As a result of the benefits of education, which is SMB, is greater than the marginal private benefit. So remember, we're looking at now the marginal social benefit and the marginal private benefit. We said, obviously, on a social level, education is considered to be something that's very important. So the benefit would help increase the number of people that want access to education. So if the market is left to its own devices, a quality, which is Q, will be produced at a price, which is P. So this will be based on what the market forces would drive. So it will be in a situation where the price will be at P and the quantity will be at Q. So if that was just based on the market forces. So there would be social inefficiency in the market since not enough education is being demanded. Okay, so we'll end up with a social inefficiency, and we don't want the situation. We actually want more people to be educated. So there should be a huge demand in terms of education in our country. However, if social benefits are acknowledged, a quantity 1, which is a Q1, will be produced at P1. But now we're looking at the social benefits. So if people see and acknowledge the social benefits, then this will create an increase, and then the price will be at P1 and the quantity will be at Q1, because people see the value or the social benefits of having access to an education facility. Okay, so P was our original price and Q was our original quality. But we are saying that if people see the social benefit, then there is going to be a shift. So we're going to have our price set at P1 and our quantity set at Q1, because the people see the benefit. They acknowledge the social benefit of an education system. And as a result of this, because they acknowledge the social benefit, this is going to increase the number of people that want to access education in our country. Okay, so it's good to see that. So our marginal social benefit will be greater than our marginal private benefit because of how society has now or is now perceiving education as something that is very important. Okay, so I hope that made sense, because we do get a few questions around social benefits. And also, there was a nice question on a past paper that said, when we look at cost-based analysis, and then it said, if government has done a comparison and the costs of doing a project were so high, but the value or the social benefits of providing that service was so high as well. So that decision needs to be made. The needs of the people and the social value and benefit needs to be taken into consideration, and then the government will decide to continue building that infrastructure because of the social benefit that is associated with that. So more education would be demanded, and this will lead to social efficiency, which is a good state to find ourselves, because then there are more people actually going to school. Then the shaded angle represents the positive externality, which is the welfare gain to society. Okay, so we can see that in the shaded area that, this is the part where there is the external benefit. So it will happen over here. So we see the value of providing that particular service because there is a huge demand around offering that service. So they see the value of having access to that facility or to that service. So let's take a short break, and I will see you right after this.